Hello and welcome to another episode of Fintech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today I am delighted to be joined by someone who not one but two of my previous guests have highly recommended to me. So you're in for a blockbuster today with no pressure aimed at you, Jon. But Jon Butler of Velox, how are you?
Good. Yeah, not too bad. How are you doing?
Really good, thanks. Really good. So as I say, highly recommended. There's a lot of interesting things that you guys are doing over there at the moment. But for those of you who haven't heard of Velox so far and what you guys have achieved over the last 3 years, give us a bit of background to yourself and what Velox is doing, if you would.
Yeah, so I mean, Velox is born out of kind of our previous careers. So myself and my partner, we worked in mainly at Goldman Sachs, but building front office trading systems since really the late 90s. Mm-hmm. After 25 years of doing that, we wanted to, there was certain takeaways, right, that you got, and it was just a lot harder than it needed to be. It was more expensive than it needed to be. We ended up doing too much ourselves. There wasn't good enough tools out there. Mm. The end product never really was never really what we wanted it to be. And so, Velox was really about, and I think also the relationship that we had with vendors wasn't correct, right? It wasn't as good as it could have been. And so we basically said, what is the future of front office technology? What is it? What based on what we've learned, what do we need? What do we want it to be going forwards? What should it be going forwards? And that's where Velox came along. And so Velox is really saying, in the next 10 to 15 years, what is the right technology to be using in front office? What is going to be the thing that's going to give you, the biggest bang for your buck, where you can get more done for less money? That's going to allow you to innovate. It's going to allow you as a business to be able to continue to adapt as your clients adapt. But then also, a lot of that is also about having, what is the right relationship you want to have with your vendor? I think I was born in the era when banks built everything themselves, without question, right? And that slowly has been changing. And certainly over the last 20 years, I always felt that the relationship with vendors was never really what it was good as it could have been. And I think we're trying to create a new type of relationship where everybody's got skin in the game, and we're all working towards a common goal. So we started the company 3 years ago. We did our seed raise last year. We've got number of clients now both sides of the Atlantic, and it's been good. It's been a good period, I would say, over the last 6 months. Hasn't really slowed us down very much. So looking forward to a busy end of 2020.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's a common theme that we're hearing that whilst the last 6 months has been disruptive, it's actually been something which hasn't hammered too many of the companies we've been speaking to too badly. Yes, there's been a little bit of a pause while people have restocked, and then suddenly it seems to have been really picking up over the last couple of months as well. I think for a business such as yours that started up so recently, and to be in the sort of size of scale up, it's going to be one of those great challenges that that people either come through and grow incredibly stronger from, or you could easily use it as an excuse and sort of lay low for a little bit. You're clearly in the former category on that, and have come out swinging. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned and why the company is going to be better from it.
I think that's a great question. I think that, just generally speaking, obviously you spend a lot of time talking to fintechs. Just generally, any disruption, any kind of big negative event is going to be positive for fintechs, right? Because it's these crises, I know from 25 years inside a bank, right? There's a lot of kind of you have to do quite a lot of wishful thinking, right? Because it's the ability to change and do large change is just hard, right? It's just a lot of inertia. It's just hard, right? And you're trying to, you work like in the businesses are under a lot of pressure to make money. So there's always something else to spend your resources on. And you need a raging inferno, to get people to focus, right? To get people to focus on new things. And so when something like when coronavirus comes along, I mean, it's just one of those events that kind of shocks everybody and kind of says, well, actually, with what everybody had to do with changing their work practices and things of that nature, the flexibility of their technology, the age of their technology, really affected, their ability to, it was really kind of tightly linked to how effective they were at dealing with the crisis. And so what it's actually done is it's accelerated a lot of people's conversations around, we're really not as nimble as we thought we were or as we needed to be. And I think that, that goes for us and a lot of other kind of people in the fintech space, right? Because it's just accelerating that, people are not able to put off the need to modernize, right?
Yeah.
So I think certainly there's that, right? I think, obviously it's a one-off, right? The coronavirus thing is a one-off. Hopefully it's a one-off. So I do think the hardest part is yet to come, frankly. Aside from the logistical challenges, which now that everybody knows you can, and that was the big panic was, what do you mean everybody's going to work from home? And then about 3 weeks later, everybody's like, oh, hey, look, we're working from home. How did that happen? And it was just and then everybody just kind of got on with it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that'll never happen again because now work practices will never be the same again. People are just going to be more flexible. I think that the challenge is going to be the economic one, right?
Yeah.
Because at the moment, the people that needed to invest in technology prior to coronavirus still do.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't happen, but if there is a sharp economic shock, that I think will be slightly harder, slightly harder to deal with. But for us, as our technology is literally about, helping clients to innovate, right? It's like, what do you need to innovate on? You need to innovate to make money, but you also need to innovate to get more efficient.
Yeah.
But even if there's less wallet to spend, when the wallet shrinks, what you spend it on is things that increase your productivity. And so, I don't think we're not necessarily worried. Because I think again, it's pushing people more towards, needing to do work with Velox and other people in our sphere.
I think that's exactly right, isn't it? It's how does the technology? I was having this conversation just literally a couple of hours ago with someone else, where how does technology at the moment add value to problems that are genuine burning issues, and rather than nice to haves? And it's put brilliantly by the person in question. And I think when you're looking there about increasing productivity, when you're looking at that, there's a sort of sweet spot of areas that people are looking for. How can it increase productivity? How can it give you more time or increase your speed, in particularly in the front office space? And how can it reduce cost? And I think those vendors who are getting that are doing it particularly well. I think your background is fascinating on this because there's been a growing trend of late over recent years of really highly talented technologists and technology leaders from investment banks and institutions who've come out and recognized there's a better way of doing things, and it's it's not unique to you to have seen that happen. And it's been over the last 3 to 5 years in particular. What do you think has prompted that, and what's the value of having walked that walk in the past, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all got to the right age. That's also got something to do with it. It's an interesting thing, right? So, I mean, obviously, I introspect and look at my career. I was very fortunate to do what I did, and my first job was building index arb, trading systems in 1997 in Japan, and it was basically the first instance of any C++ based trading system, in-house trading system. And the system we were replacing involved running to the back of the screen, back of the trading floor with big cassette discs to put into the Tokyo trading infrastructure. and then
incredible,
wait for
isn't
the
it?
matrix printer to basically send, to give you your accepts. And so literally in the 25 years I was doing it, we've gone from that to 80% electronification. I don't know how much more productive a trader is now than they were 20 years ago, but a lot. But it's literally, it's there wasn't anything before that, right? So it's not like you can't be critical of anything that happened or didn't happen, because we were figuring it out as we went, right? It was just a completely new discipline. And so I think there's a mature, so the markets themselves and the products themselves have kind of matured. I think the pace of change dropped over the last kind of 6, 7, 8 years. And so you can kind of look at that now, and you can look back and you can say, okay, right, so that was our first attempt at it. And there's a big enough sample size to be able to say, well, if we wanted to do that again, but we wanted to be able to do it at 1/10 of the cost, or we wanted the outcome to be different, whereby people are now not stuck with legacy and they're stuck being unable to innovate. They have systems that just grow with them, and they continue to grow with them, and they don't, they continue to be able to adapt. What was missing? And so I think that, people like myself and others that I'm sure you're thinking about, now have that sample size. They have that, you can see, one thing we say, and we say to clients all the time, right, which is, we haven't split the atom at Velox. We don't have this kind of magic, this kind of magic, formula that no one thought of. It's a rational journey, rational conclusion to come to about this is how really you should be building front office technology in the future, based on the experiences that we've all had. We just were opportunistic. We were able to take the opportunity to go and build it and start providing it. But that inside out notion, right? That startup inside out, you see it a lot in medicine, in healthcare, where, and it's incredibly successful, where you have a surgeon that, that worked for 20 years and then basically, just knows what's missing, right? Just is the perfect person to say, I wish I had this tool. And then they decide that it's time for them to go and do their next career, and they, go and get some funding and go and build it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think that's sort of being in the trenches just sometimes allows people to actually say, look, here's a different way of getting frustrated. And the interesting thing that you spoke there about was the sort of relationship with vendors, and the traditional relationship that I think we sort of said early on, that it sounded like vendor has often been a sort of dirty word in the end user space. Yeah, tell us a bit about that relationship and how you've endeavored to make sure that changes.
Yeah, and I would start out by saying that I said a big part of my career has been building things ourselves, but also there was always vendors and vendor relationships to manage, and I feel their pain. I really do, because it's incredibly hard. The business model that from 20 years ago, when they had to use the technology that was available then, they had to use the knowledge that was available then, and so it's virtually impossible to kind of build on that technology of that age, using those practices, and evolve a product that suits all your clients' needs, right, and still make that commercially viable. Right. So it's been incredible. It's been almost impossible, I would say. Right. And it's a generational thing. And so what that's ended up with now is kind of a tough relationship between some clients and vendors, where from the start of the relationship to now, what the client needs out of the product versus what the product provides, the gap just gets to the point where it becomes untenable. And again, it's not criticism. I honestly don't know how vendors would have done it differently, because you couldn't know. There was nothing. It was unknowable. How to solve that problem 20 years ago. We just had to live it. And Velox is all about the future front office technology. And so you look at the future and you say, well, rose-tinted spectacles. What should we try to achieve for? Well, a more symbiotic relationship with vendors, where that doesn't happen, where the product that you get, where it feels more like, an extension. But I mean, we talk about this, I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch, but at Velox, we talk about the best of buy and build. But buying technology, there's fantastic things of doing that, and we need to preserve that.
Yeah.
Building your own technology gives you a lot of flexibility, and we need to preserve that. So it's about kind of providing a solution that does both.
Yeah.
You know, I get to buy the things I don't want to build because, you know, it's kind of hard and I don't have time. But I don't want to lose that. I still want it to feel a bit like my own team and my own technology, because I might need to go in that direction next year, or I might need to go in that direction next year. And so, you know, that's what I think the vendors of the future will look like. And some people will, you know, scoff and say, well, that's impossible. But I would say, well, but wouldn't it be great if we can do it? So let's try to do it.
Well, I think it's becoming ever more possible all the time already, isn't it? I mean, we're talking about the future of front office technology, but I'd say that today there's been and particularly over the last, you know, maybe 4 years, there's been this sort of massive diversification of the vendor world in trading technology. And look, we had this, well, we still to an extent have this suffocating procurement process that wipes out so many companies that could add value in various different places.
Yeah.
That I think has probably been thought a little. Yeah. But again, it's something that's improved. 5-6 years ago, we had a panel with the head of electronic trading from one of the major tier 1 banks who was sat on it for us, and there's 100 odd people in the audience, mainly from, you know, that sort of background, who are sort of barraging him with, you need to help us, and what's the answer to, you know, to getting through this, and his answer was well, look, you need to make sure you've got 3 or 4 different sponsors from different areas of the business. You need to make sure you're adding value. And I think, you know, now what's happening is there was a little bit of sense from their side on that, but there was also a little of a huge amount from the procurement teams that needed to make it a little bit more accessible to add that value from it. And of course, with so much regulation and compliance and difficulty, it has to be done right. You can't speed some things up. But I think there was also a massive ignorance or naivety is probably the right word, about how companies should be approaching that and recognizing those sales cycles and how long it might take to get involved within that. Yeah, I was just saying, my view is that we're now seeing a far more fragmented space with far more vendors and far more bespoke solutions, which is part of that buy and build philosophy, where you're seeing people being able to tailor and adapt there and be much more agile, rather than, I'm a vendor, this is the solution, this is how we do it. Let's listen to the customer and provide much more of a solution that can be tailored to suit their specific needs. And I don't know if you've seen the same thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, the other thing, one thing I would say though, I mean, it's we talk about the procurement process. I mean, I said I've spent most of my career on the other side, and you know, large 30,000. Well, I mean, that's just Goldman. I mean, JP Morgan, hundreds of thousands of people, right? Massive organizations, right? Their internal processes like procurement. You don't just change it, right? You don't.
Yeah, of course.
So I mean, it's hard to imagine, unless you've been in that. It's just the pace of change over the last 20 years has just been relentless, right? And some things just get left behind. So things you see today, like procurement, are what procurement was needed to be 10, 15 years ago. That's how long it takes to change these types of things.
Yeah.
And the role of external technology to capital markets has just completely evolved, right? Completely changed. I mean, you were just, before 2005, I mean, there was the brief, 2001 initial kind of tech boom, but you still weren't looking at technology partners in an investment bank. You're still building it yourself. And then, it was really the birth in consumer electronics, right? The Apples, the Googles, the things of that nature that really, really made things explode in the technology industry. And now all of a sudden, you could argue the best technology and the best technologists is not going to be found on Wall Street or in the city. It's going to be found in tech companies. And so you're still seeing, the banks having to rapidly adapt to that, right? And then in the middle of all that, you had 2008. Which so basically for 5-6 years, that was just the focus, right? So it's only really been 2015, 2016 that things have been able to kind of start to evolve again. But I absolutely see that. I think one of the other drivers, and I was again really lucky to see this firsthand. So I think Goldman Sachs did it right first with a system called SecDB. And again, talking about the future of front office technology, you have to look at one of the big drivers of that is, well, the skill sets and the role of a front office individual is going to change, going to continue to change, going to continue to become more technical, as will, the world in general, I would say. And so not in every case, but I think the average front office person is much more likely in 10 years' time to be able to write their own, or want or feel the need to write their own applications, right? To make their own changes. It's not rocket science, right? And people that are coming out of STEM, we call it in the US, but science backgrounds, even if they then go into economics, right? They know how to program. And so the other thing as well is, I think, this notion of systems that don't change will go away, because everybody's going to want to change them. You deliver a piece of vendor technology, you're going to be delivering it to potentially business people sitting on the desk that want a lot of control themselves. They want to be able to talk to a client in the morning, figure out something that is going to enrich that relationship and get it into production over the next few days. And so I think that's already happening. Goldman did it very well for SecDB in the derivatives space. And we're trying to create a similar type of thing for in the flow trading space.
There's an interesting piece you talk there. I mean, you talk about the future of front office technology, but we're also talking about the evolution of the front office traders themselves, right? And that I think that's really interesting, where you touch on the backgrounds and the sort of route and the changing face of traders, full stop, because it is becoming far more scientific and far more technical, and I think that's sort of changing the face of who you're interacting with as well, which does lend itself to that sort of customization and the input. So it becomes, does that make it a more difficult sell or a better sell? Are you preaching to the converted now?
Yeah, it's a better sell. It's better. It's better. Well, it's just, I mean, it's just different, right? But certainly in terms of what we're doing, this is another tailwind. That's helping us. I mean, you can just look at, I forget when I was talking to somebody about this, but you can look at, if you look over the last 25 years of people that have run like equities or run, cash equities, and they're back, 25 years ago, you wouldn't have found anybody that had anything to do with technology at all, or even science, right? It would have been pure economics, pure financial, generally speaking. And so that now, when you look at the people that do it now, it's become a lot more technical.
Yeah, and it's in another interesting piece that you were just talking there, is this sort of, for want of a better expression, poacher gamekeeper sort of place that you've come from within there, and you sort of said, look, you can understand the frustrations of both sides, from that, and also this procurement process, because it is the sort of banging hammer that people get very frustrated about, from there. And you're absolutely right. Look, you can't change years of institutionalization to expect anything different from it. And we are seeing evolution in it. From your experience of having been, on the client side and now moving yourself over to there, what advantage does that give you in being able to sort of feel those frustrations from the vendor, and being able to help people navigate that process with their procurement teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's certainly much bigger than I would have expected it to be. I mean, it's been one of those things that there's been a number of things, obviously, both on positive and negative, that have been very different from what we envisaged before we kicked off Velox. But that, you can't put a price on that kind of insider, that kind of experience at the coalface. I think the one thing you begin to realize with clients is you need, a successful kind of engagement with a client is kind of based on, are you able to explain very, very quickly, make them feel as though you know their world, right? You can understand both, the problems that they have, why they face those problems, why those problems are hard to solve, and then the context within which and it's I mean, I've seen it on both sides, and having that, being able to kind of establish that relationship is just incredibly important, because it's very hard to it's very hard to kind of, I think, no matter how good the product is, when you're making a technology commitment, there's an element of a leap of faith, right? I mean, there has to be. There's an element of risk, and I think just having that knowing that you're talking to somebody who really understands what it is that your problems are, is just huge. Is hugely beneficial. Yeah, and I think the thing you have with technology and technology sales is, I mean, you can do POCs, you can do stuff, but the reality is it's only in a year's time when you're really going to know, did I make the right decision about this technology, right? Because it's just, that's, I mean, our technology is about helping you to do difficult things, faster and cheaper, but you still have to go and do difficult things to see whether, what we're saying is true. And that takes time. And so what gets you over the hump in the beginning is that relationship. And do you trust people that are running the company? Should they know, do they have the credentials? Have they lived through this to know what they're doing? And so, yeah, it's been hugely beneficial.
So you had a stellar career in institutions and you have a track record, a great track record within that sort of space, and to do this and to take that risk 3 years ago to move in and do that takes a tremendous amount of spirit, but it also takes great belief. It takes great belief that this is something here which is going to add value, right? Tell us a little bit about your thinking of making that leap, because you say, look, that you mentioned probably jokingly beforehand about time of life and all that sort of stuff to be able to make that sort of play. What was it that really made you think, do you know what, I can do something here that's going to make a difference? Because every time I've ever spoken to someone who's done what you've done, there is an overwhelming sense of purpose that drives that decision. That I presume was a really important part of your thought process as well, to take that move.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably everybody has a slightly different story. And there's push, like with any job transition, it's a push. There's push factors and pull factors. I mean, I think one thing you do over the course of your career is you do different jobs, and some of them work out better than others, because that's just how careers go. You do start to get a sense of, what do I really, what am I, right? And in what is at my core, right? What do I really have a passion and a belief about, right? What really kind of, what's the thing that keeps getting me out of bed in the morning and, and running up the next mountain? And I've always been really, really passionate about, building, making technology easier, right? Making technology better. I love technology. I'm not as classically trained as some people, but technology has always been my life. And so it's always been about kind of like, it's always been, even though when you're building the things within banks, you're always kind of, what you're trying to do is kind of find a way to build it better, right? How can we build it even faster next time, even cheaper next time? Right, that's the passion that kind of burns, and eventually you get to the point where you realize that, right, to take this to the next level, you're not going to be able to do it within a bank, right? So I think it's really that, right, which is that kind of like, how can we, we're really driven, we're really passionate about trying to build that next best thing, that next bit of technology that will drive things forwards. And and setting up our own company was the kind of logical way to do that.
Best route for it, yeah. And I love that what you talked about as well before this, and I'm sure you'd be too modest to say it, but that that credibility and that those credentials that you bring that sort of trust, and trust is such an important part, particularly in investing in technology at the moment, that there are people there at the helm of the company who've walked the walk. I love the fact that you're saying that it's that credibility that will win the clients. Interestingly, you said, look, they're retained because of the technology. And I love that whole concept. I think it works brilliantly to say, look, here's value that can be added to your customer base. Yeah. But and staying on that, because amazingly this time has run out extraordinarily quickly. And
right,
we've scratched the surface of it all. but what I do want to say is find out a little bit more about what's next. So when you're talking about the future of technology and you're talking about the next big thing and you're talking about all of that, what does 2021 look like for you, and how do you do that? How are you going to add value next year? With everything that's changing and so much volatility, and where's the value that's going to be added by Velox?
Well, I mean, 2021 is pretty straightforward for us. Our product is certain. The first stage of our product is built, and in production, clients are using it, and we still have a lot of growth in that, and as we grow, so we'll be doing a lot of that in 2021, which is continuing to sell the application platform, and that's really just pure kind of a traditional kind of company growth story. In terms of what the interesting stuff about the product development and then the next phase, we will be refining. I mean, we talk about ourselves as being, what's in vogue at the moment is low code, the notion of no and low code. And it's a topic for another podcast, but
we'll be back for that.
yeah, it's a good one. And we have no code, low code. You can kind of, it's had different words over the last 50 years for software engineering, but essentially software engineering has always been about, when they built Java, it was when they created Java, it was to make it easier, right, and faster to build things than with C++, and so it goes on.
Yeah.
No code has kind of taken it a little bit further to the point where now all of a sudden you don't need developers, which is not something we've really been able to kind of fully understand why that's necessary. But for us, we're going to keep refining our platform. We're going to basically be introducing our own version of not low code, but really continuing to kind of push along that journey, which is really about refining the tools that allow that continue to accelerate innovation. Right, because if you think about what is no code, low code, ultimately at the end of the day, it's allowing clients to do more faster.
Yeah.
Right? So but it does it with kind of more graphical tools, and so we're refining and developing our own version of that, which is suited directly for front office, directly for sales and trading, and directly for sales and traders. And so that will be something as a product that we'll be working more on next year, that will be probably go to market probably in 2022.
Exciting stuff. So more value, more ease for people to use it. So people who've listened to this, and I know that you're not one for the great sell and the great Barnum and Bailey pitches on all of this sort of stuff, but for those who are watching and listening to this and interested to find out more about the story and Velox, who should be reaching out to you, and how best to get in touch?
Really, it's anybody within capital markets that is struggling to innovate.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it's either innovate because there's a regulation that you've got a regulation that requires your technology to jump through hoops, or you need to grow a business, or you need to process more flow, but you can't afford to add 5 more traders. And it's the technology that's a limitation. Anybody that's in that situation, I'd love to have a conversation with, right? Because I think, Velox is trying to, and we've said it a few times on social media, it's really kind of, blow the doors off the kind of the innovation stagnation, right? Because I think one thing you can say is innovation has stagnated, and a lot of that is because the technology isn't nimble enough. And so, anybody that's suffering from that right now, we'd love to talk to. I'm on LinkedIn. We have a Velox page on LinkedIn and a Velox website. So there's plenty of ways but DM me on LinkedIn is probably the quickest way.
I'd definitely say it's well worth that as well, because it's there's a good flow of really highly relevant content that comes out from that. So I'm enjoying seeing as it comes through. So thanks for sharing it all.
It's been great, right? That's been really and thanks, shout out to Steve Grob for continuously nagging me.
That doesn't sound like Steve.
Yeah, to start doing that, and it's been great, right? And it's been a good way and there's been good interaction. And it's been a good way to share some of our ideas and reconnect with people that I haven't connected with in many years. It's been all good.
Yeah, that's the amazing byproduct of it, isn't it? It's about how many people it can reach that have been dormant in your network for a long time, who suddenly see something which you're looking at. So I love that. The innovation stagnation is a catchphrase that we're going to be using, I think, when we push this out in a couple of weeks' time.
You don't want to be pulling it out after a night out, but
that's very, very, very true. Very true. Listen, Jon, it's been an utter pleasure. Really enjoyed that, and like you say, look, there's a whole nother show on no and low code and everything in between that we can be talking about. So look, let's see what the next couple of months brings. I'm sure it's going to be nothing other than a continued upward pathway for you guys. And I'd love to catch up again soon and hear about what the next phase of growth is all about and how that product comes along. But thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed that today.
Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you all for watching. Thanks to Jamie and Steve for the recommendation. Lived up to all of those. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you all soon on another episode of Fintech Focus TV. Thanks ever so much.